One of the hardest things to countenance really is when somebody knocks on your door and they want to sell you their religion or pitch their religious point of view, and you wonder, gee, how do I comport myself in this situation? What are the best tactics? What's the best approach? What kind of questions can I be asking in dealing with this situation? And so let me give you some things to think about. Now, this is not my specialty. I don't focus so much on aberrant Christian groups, which used to be called cults. Word doesn't have as much usefulness anymore because there's all kinds of other bizarre connotations that are associated with it. But let's just call them alternate religions that sometimes sound like they're Christian. And these are folks that come door to door, Jehovah's Witnesses, LDS, Mormons, which, just for clarity's sake, is a completely different religion than Christianity. There's not a single theological crossover between LDS or Mormon theology and Christian theology. All the words are the same, all the definitions are different. So please don't be confused in that particular point, which, by the way, is the reason they're knocking on your door. And if you tell them when you go to the Presbyterian or the Baptist or the Calvary Chapel Church down the street, they're going to still pitch you their deal on the Book of Mormon and Joseph Smith, because you need him. What you have is inadequate. Okay, sometimes that issue is kind of obfuscated or confused a little bit of late. But so I'm going to offer you just a framework to be thinking about when you engage people. Of course, you always want to be gracious. You always want to show the character of Christ. If you're willing to have a conversation, invite them in, sit them down. You might tell them, I'm a follower of Christ myself. Would you mind if we start with a prayer? And then you pray a simple prayer, not long, not elaborate. But my suggestion is that you make the prayer personal, not formal. Because most people in cultic, aberrant religion circumstances are used to a more formalized religion, and for them to have to countenance somebody that has really got a genuine, living, loving relationship with God is a little bit of an eye-opener to them. So express yourself genuinely and graciously, and then be ready for the conversation. Now, strategically, big picture stuff, there are three things that are important when dealing with these aberrant groups. Three ways that they go south. Now, they can go south lots of different ways, and there are all kinds of particular doctrinal things that you can fuss about that don't really matter so much given the big picture. Here are the three things. The person of Christ. Who is Jesus? And in virtually every case, in fact, I can't think of hardly any, the deity of Christ is tossed out the window in this new religious venture, or the unique deity of Christ in the classical Christian sense, in the Nicene sense, in the Chalcedonian sense. What all of you as followers of Christ in the Protestant or Roman Catholic tradition have understood to be the deity of Christ, that's out the door. So it's the person of Christ, it is the work of Christ, that is the cross of Jesus Christ, that rescues us from ourselves. And the third issue is the issue of authority. Who gets to say what's true? And in many cases, these groups that you talk to are going to at least give lip service to the Bible. They're going to give lip service to the Bible, but they're going to bring in their other works, either other inspired texts or the authority of their organization, like the Watchtower Society. Now, since those are the three big issues, my recommendation is that your conversation focus on those three issues. Who is Jesus? What must I do to be saved? And who gets to say what the authoritative answers to those questions actually are? Okay? In the case of the LDS and the other groups too, they all say the Bible is an inspired Word of God, but then they only use the Bible when it supports their own point of view, and when it doesn't, they dismiss it or retranslate it or something like that. And these are the kinds of things that you ought to focus in on. Now, one question that I ask oftentimes, because the issue of authority is so important, is this question: why should I believe that your organization speaks authoritatively for God? A difficulty when you come to say Mormons, is that they're going to say you believe the organization because you read the Book of Mormon, you prayed, and you got a feeling about the truth of the Book of Mormon, which they translate into the truth of the entire Mormon Church, and you're caught now in a subjective experience to affirm your doctrine. And why do they give you a subjective experience? Because they read something out of the book of James, chapter 1, that they think validates it. Now, the irony is when you try to go back to other passages to rebut other doctrinal concerns that they have, the person and the work of Christ, for example, they're going to be dismissive, and they're going to say, well, we believe the Bible insofar as it's properly translated. Well, that's my view, too. I don't believe the Bible when it's been mistranslated, but this becomes a disingenuous tool on their part because they use that to disregard verses, I think, that work against their theology. So a question you can ask is, when this issue comes up, what verses or passages have been incorrectly translated, as far as you know? And if you don't know that a passage has been incorrectly translated, then maybe we should take it at face value and stay focused on the basics. And the basics are the person of Christ, the work of Christ, and authority. Jesus is the God-man. That's who he is. His work was to live the perfect life in our place and then to die in our place to take our crimes so we could be justified in virtue of what he did for us, not based on our own works. And the way we know that is because the Bible, the inspired Word of God, is the sole authority over all other so-called authorities to tell us what is true about God and the person and work of Christ. And that's where I suggest that you focus with any of these aberrant Christian groups.